So we're back on the player review train, and today we're going to look at the 2022 performance of former All Star, I should say, Brandon Lowe.
A lot of hot takes, a lot of facts, a lot of figures, a lot of percentages are coming your way. So let's get started right now.
You are Locked On Rays, your daily Tampa Bay Rays podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, my name is Kevin Weiss.
I'm Ulises Sambrano.
And we're the host of the Locked On Rays podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for making Locked On Rays your very first listen every day. Be sure you subscribe to our podcast on any of your favorite platforms and check us out on YouTube at Locked On Rays. And you can email us anytime, lockedonrays@gmail.com. As you should know, if you've been listening to these player reviews by now, we go through the players' performance in terms of what went well, what went wrong, their future with the team, and final grade for the 2022 season. So let's get right into it. Second baseman Brandon Lowe, who could maybe at one point be first baseman Brandon Lowe, depending on what the Rays choose to do in 2023 and beyond.
That's correct. But you know what? Before we get to Brandon Lowe, I just want to say a belated wink, wink. Congratulations to Fred McGriff getting elected to the Hall of Fame. This was breaking news on Sunday, so obviously I'm just being facetious here. But 4 days late, good for Fred McGriff. And obviously he will not go in with an Atlanta Braves hat, but obviously with a Devil Rays hat. Of course, right?
Yeah, hopefully. No, that's the thing is like, which one does he go in on? I mean, he is
has
a Tampa
plenty
native. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe he just puts all the hats into, he just closes his eyes and picks one out, and that's the one he goes with.
Yeah, that'd be kind of cool. All right, back to the story at hand. Brandon Lowe. Before we get to the positives, I just want to say this to everybody. This was Brandon Lowe's worst year in Major League Baseball by far. So let's get started on the slash line. 221, 308 on base, a 383 slug. That's a 691 OPS. Big wolf. 8 home runs, 25 RBIs, 1 stolen base. Had a 10.2 walk rate, a strikeout rate of 22.9. He was he had a WRC plus of 104, so 4 points above average, and an F/WAR of 0.9. The first thing that got my attention here was he put up the best numbers of his career regarding the walk rate and the strikeout rate.
Yeah.
He had never had as good as a 10.2 walk rate and as good as a 22.9 K rate. So he was more patient at the plate. He didn't strike out as much as he had in the past. I think the factors obviously are getting more comfortable with Major League pitching, being a little bit more of a veteran, maybe knowing what to look for with pitchers, knowing the pitchers that you're going to be facing, knowing the scouting reports, what to actually care about in those scouting reports. Just a whole lot of things having to do with growing within the game that I think Brandon Lowe, now it's not an older statesman, but he's no spring chicken either. I mean, this guy has had enough experience to kind of be a veteran within the Rays clubhouse. And I think that always will show in the walk rate and the strikeout rate that you usually will see those improve as guys age.
Yeah, no, those are two great metrics right there. Also, he had good base running metrics according to Fangraphs, and I always think he's been solid in that respect. He's never going to be a guy that's going to steal, 25, 30 bags, but I think he's competent when he's on the base paths. And then, yes, it's only 8 home runs, but I will note that it seemed, and if you go back and look at the numbers, pretty much all of his 8 home runs were no doubters. They weren't Justin Meadows, just scrape fence. Like they were shots. And that's something that we've grown accustomed to with Brandon Lowe is he can, yeah, he's not a big guy, but man, he's got strength with the best of them. The other thing too is that I find interesting, and I don't know really the reasoning why this is, but I believe his numbers versus lefties were better than righties.
Yeah, that was kind of a weird thing that spoke to me as well. In 48 plate appearances, he had a 793 OPS against lefties, and in 218 plate appearances against righties, he had a 666 OPS. So,
Yeah.
Obviously, with 48 plate appearances against lefties, that's a very small sample size, so we can't really say, oh, he definitely got better, or this is the new Brandon Lowe. No, I don't think we can really come to conclusions, but it is something kind of nifty to pick out and say, wow, that's fortunate. Hopefully it was an aberration against righties, and hopefully it's a starter of a trend that he can actually perform against lefties. Because boy, if Brandon Lowe were to be putting up 793 OPSs against lefties, it's already a great deal financially for the Rays to get this much production from the second baseman position. But if he's able to improve his numbers against lefties to this rate, which I'm not saying that he will, but I'm saying that if he were, my goodness, this would be the best bargain in all sports.
Absolutely. And that's the other thing too, is I know you mentioned that it was the worst season of his career, but at the end of the day, he was above average in respect to OPS plus and what his salary is, and putting up those types of numbers, even in as few games as it does count for something. And I know, hey, get ready for your bump, but we didn't have to see him in the postseason. That was another positive that I've got as well for him too, because that's something that has to get situated at some shape or form. With his career, he's got to put forth a good postseason showing. So we'll talk more about Brandon Lowe, but first we have to tell you about BetOnline.net. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. It's where you can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there: football, basketball, soccer, esports, and more. It is all covered at betonline.net. It is the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. So head over to their website today or use that mobile device of yours to learn more. BetOnline, it is where the game starts. All right, looking at the not so good with Brandon Lowe from 2022, Ulises, what stuck out to you most in regards to that?
Well, let's look at how the production did dip and why it was the worst of his career. The WRC Plus, his rookie season, 114 in 2018, 127 after that, 151, 137, boom, down to 104. Like you pointed out, Kevin, yes, that is above average by 4 points. However, when you're talking 157, 151, 137, 127, like this was a big dip. Now we know why. And the biggest reason why is the health concerns. It struck him again twice this season, and he was only able to play 65 games. In these player reviews we've talked about, you got to post. Like it's awful when they get hurt, when the players get hurt, it by happenstance, by trying to get a play, or because their bodies just normally break down. But at the end of the day, like this is a game where if you're going to be posting up, that's more valuable than not. Playing 65 games and being the main offensive, piece that the Rays had in 2022, that's not going to cut it. So that's definitely my main negative with him would be the health concern. But something kind of struck me with the hard hit rates and the barrel percentage this year. The barrel percentage was at 10.3. That went down by 4 points from last year. And the hard hit rate was at 38.9%. That also went down by 4 points. So hitting the ball a little bit less where he should be, barreling it up, and not hitting it as hard as he usually does. That is a point for concern, of course, But if I can be devil's advocate, I do think it comes back to that first negative, which is the health. He wasn't really healthy, so therefore the swing wasn't the same.
Yeah, the back injury certainly could have sapped his power to some extent. And if you look, I believe within some of those analytics, he was pulling the ball less and hitting the ball more straight away and the other way. So maybe it's also a combination of the back issue and maybe a little bit of a different approach of, hey, I'm going to be more selective and punch the ball around, ipso facto, walking more and lower K rate as opposed to the big bopper that we know him to be. And it's kind of like, what do you want from Brandon Lowe? It's great to have that low strikeout rate and that high walk rate, but we also like to see, 35, 39 home runs over the course of 162, whatever it may be. So now what concerns me is with the back injury, that I wonder how that's going to affect him in 2023, because I'm not a doctor by any means, but I've heard that is something that can cause issue or wreak havoc over multiple seasons. So I'm really curious to see how he comes back and steps back from this issue and this injury. And also, Brandon Lowe over the past couple of seasons, even despite putting up, great numbers, and that's the other thing, just overall letdown from what he did in 2020 and 2021. But there have been seasons in his past where he comes out the gate and starts slow, has a slow April, has a slow May. Maybe he has a really slow April and really slow May because he hasn't seen game action or much game action in such a long time. That's really what concerns me for 2023 as well.
Definitely. And one other thing, which is the financial reason, is that he will be paid $5.3 million next year. So obviously it's not none of our money, but when you look at the payroll and the production, if he gets hurt again, if he is not able to post up and puts these numbers once again, which hopefully he won't, and the numbers probably say that he won't. But if it were to happen, that's that low bargain deal, that very team friendly deal now starts to kind of be heavy on your neck, doesn't it? 5.3 mil, still very affordable, especially if you're a billionaire owner like all of these guys are.
Yes.
But you have to play. You have to show up, and 65 games, even for $5 million, is not enough. It's not going to cut it.
Right. And that kind of gets to his future with the team and what the Rays are going to do with him and what they have in store with him. Of course, he is under club control through 2026 at a below market salary. And I know it's crazy to think about trading Brandon Lowe, but at some point the Rays are going to have to figure out what they're going to do with their infield, because they have Lowe, they have Jonathan Aranda, they have Taylor Walls, they have Vidal Brujan. It's a cluttered mix right there. So and maybe part of solving that issue is moving Brandon Lowe to first for the foreseeable future. Although, devil's advocate, he hasn't played first base really since 2019. But again, I joke about how easy it is to play first base. Something tells me that he can get the hang of it. And I know he's not the prototypical size of a first baseman, but the Rays have previously put anybody and anybody there at one form or another, right? They've put a guy that's 5'10" there. They've put a guy that's 6'7" there with no glove. Again, they'd probably put a trash can there if the trash can could hit 30 bombs. So, but I know it's something that we've brought up before, is the cluttered infield. Like there's got to be something has to happen this offseason. Like you can't make all opportunities for all of these guys. And I haven't even mentioned all of them.
No, you haven't. And one way of opening up that is to not have one position for this one guy. If you can have Brandon Lowe play first base, which, by the way, I know people that, he's too short. Harold Ramirez is no Chris Young. Okay. Yeah. Harold Ramirez is 5'10", which I think is about the same.
Did Brasso play for some first as well?
Brasso did play some
He's
first.
5'10".
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can't tell me the Rays would never do that. Like, no, we just set two examples. So you can't, I don't buy the whole stature thing not being why, he's not fit for first base. he actually has already played first base, like you said, for the Rays as late as 2019. So I would be okay with that. You would be opening up the field a little bit more. I think you would hopefully try to keep him a little bit healthier if he's at first base rather than making diving plays in second and by shortstop behind the bag. I know the shift is over, but not really, because you're going to be seeing kind of quirky things happen with that in 2023. A good way of avoiding those things, those health concerns, would be to put him at first base, I would think. And again, you would be finally having some pop from that first base side. So I know people love the fact that 39's home runs are going to come from second base, but ultimately, wherever they come from, it doesn't matter. Like,
it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. It's, I mean, if you could have a great second baseman hitting 39 bombs, but if your first baseman's not doing anything, where are you at? Like, if it all evens out at the end of the day. I will say with Brandon Lowe playing first base, I agree. Like, there's a lot of factors into that, because I think the height thing, like, people are going to talk about that, but Brandon Lowe might be more athletic than a guy that's 6'2", 6'3", so he could reach to some of those balls that are, not right at his chest. By the same token, it probably, I would think, if I was a second baseman or a third baseman or a shortstop or anybody, pitcher, whatever it may be, catcher, throwing to first base, you like to have a big target, a big body. Brandon Lowe's not really that. So there's also kind of a, it's almost a mind thing of, I've got this big 6'5", 240-pound burly guy with a big glove. Like, I just got to throw it in that vicinity and he'll be able to make the play. But I think it would, at the end of the day, just, hey, your fielders have to make a somewhat decent throw. And I think Brandon Lowe would be able to scoop it up and handle it. Like, I think
it's a fair concern. It's a fair concern to want to have a big target. I understand that 100%. I mean, Rowdy Tellez is a bigger target than Brandon Lowe. 100% agree with that. And you might feel a little bit more comfortable with that. But if we talk about defensive liability,
in the reach as well, you have a guy that's 6'5". He might not be able to jump as high as Brandon Lowe, but if he's got a longer wingspan, he can
stretch out.
Yeah, you can stretch out and make that play. That's the other consideration as well, as if a throw is short or not as hard, being able to outstretch that arm, that can make the difference over the course of 162. A lot of outs and maybe a ball game or two.
It can.
Those are the within the inches thing.
But again, then we go back to, like, do the Rays feel like that's the way that they have to put first baseman in? And if that's the way that they thought, Mike Brasa would never have touched first base. Harold Ramirez wouldn't have ever touched first base.
Well, maybe for like a spot start or a couple spot starts, maybe not Brandon Lowe at, playing 162 at that position.
Maybe not 162, but if you can open up that avenue for Brandon Lowe to play first base, say 50 games. I don't know how many games Harold Ramirez played as a first baseman. I actually do have it, 32 games. Harold Ramirez played as a first baseman. So at least you can tell me, I would think, being a second baseman, like we've seen Brandon Lowe make spectacular plays, maybe not so many sometimes. I would think he would be a better first baseman than Harold Ramirez. So if you're willing to put Harold Ramirez, a guy with the same stature and maybe not as good defensively speaking with first base, you would at least be okay with putting 32 games of Brandon Lowe at first base.
If you're okay with putting Jose Martinez at first base, you should be okay.
Big target,
just about anyway.
Big target, but again, defensive bleeping liability, right? So 32 to 50 games, Brandon Lowe at first base, I think would kind of help the logjam situation at second base, kind of freeing it up a little bit. You wouldn't have to, get that big acquisition. We were talking about a Jose Abreu, which is already off the board. I don't know. I banged the drum for a long time now, and I'm not going to stop.
I think it could definitely supplement his offense, because it's such much easier position. I mean, just personally speaking, than playing second base, and just so much less that you have to think about and focus on playing the first base position as opposed to up the middle. So it's almost like, it would take a lot off his plate, at least defensively, which could translate into better offensive numbers, just generally speaking there. Before we get to a grade with Brandon Lowe, couple of hypotheticals here, couple over-unders I have for B-Lowe going forward. 2023, over-under 135 games played.
Under.
Over under 245 batting average.
The shift is going away. I'm going to go hopefully over, but not by much.
Okay. Over under 22 home runs.
With a dead ball, and I'm saying that he's not going to play 130 games, so he's going to play like 120. And in 60 games, he got 8 home runs in 60 games. So times 2 would be 16. I'm going to go under.
Okay. For his career, over under 2.5 All-Star berths.
Oh, he still has one more All-Star for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Well, he's a one-time All-Star. So you think he makes 2?
Oh, the 2020 All-American League team thing doesn't count as an All-Star, right?
No.
Crap.
I know it's not really fair, but
yeah. Dude, he was great at 2020.
So he makes 2 more All-Star teams in his career.
Okay. That's going to be rough. That's going to be tough, but he can do it. I'm going to say yes.
Over under 150 career home runs. He's at 84 right now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's got that. Yeah.
You think he gets to 200?
I won't put my hand over any fire for that.
Okay. Fair enough.
Health concerns, baby. It's tough.
That's the thing.
People,
yeah.
I mean, it's a tough game. People just like to project. It's tough, man. It's a tough game.
The fact that like Brandon Lowe might not get to 200 home runs and Fred McGriff has 493, like it's remarkable.
I know, and people are like, those people are just accumulators of stats. Like, oh, they just stayed for 25. You know how difficult it is to stay 5 years in the league? These guys stayed for 25, 20 years. Well, they're just accumulating numbers. You try doing that. Heck, even dudes that played in that league can't even do that.
Yes.
Can't even do that. So to those people that are saying like, oh, those accumulators, you know what to do with yourselves.
Yes. All right. It's great time for Brandon Lowe for 2022. Get the red pen ready. What are you giving him from a season where he played 60 plus games and well, we can say it frankly, disappointed then from what we were expecting, or I don't think we expected him to give 39 home runs again, but middle of the order punch and at least 130 games played.
65 games played, 691 OPS, 104 WRC plus, 0.9 F4. This is screaming like a 77 to me.
That's actually a little bit higher than I would have expected. I'm giving him a middle C, 75.
Okay, so 76.
So, yeah,
that's fair. And you know what? If you're watching this on YouTube and you don't think that's fair, write it down in the comments. What would you have graded Mr. Brandon Lowe for the 2022 season?
And what's crazy is like his 8 home runs were probably like 4th on the team too from this past year.
That's so sad. Yes.
Really insane. Yeah.
Tied
really
to
bad.
Taylor Walls, by the way. Tied to Taylor Walls.
Yeah. That means something really wrong happened with Brandon Lowe. Yeah. All right. Thank you for making the Locked On Rays podcast your very first listen every day. Now make your second listen the Locked On Sports Today podcast. That is also free and available on all platforms. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Stay safe, and we will talk to you tomorrow.